So today we have with us Mr. Mark Hurlbert, and Mark is the Chief Strategy Officer at the Nerdery, hence Becky's comment about the nerds. The Nerdery is based in Bloomington and is also one of Minnesota's top 20 fastest growing companies. Mark was an early advocate of the company's exploration of partnering with agencies to handle the interactive needs of their end clients, an approach that has fueled the Nerdery's rapid growth. As an advocate for strong company culture, Mark helped to build the working environment that is responsible for the Nerdery being voted as the best place to work in the Twin Cities for 2 consecutive years by the Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal. Today, Mark will tell us about the origins and success of Prime Digital Academy, which emphasizes learning by doing, learning from industry experts, and learning through apprenticeship. Founded by and co-located with the Nerdery, Prime brings a holistic approach to helping students understand the job of a software engineer and how they'll need to collaborate with project managers, designers, quality assurance people, and especially clients and stakeholders. Prime students experience the vibrant culture of the Nerdery and get real exposure to the working life of a software engineer starting on their first day of school. Before joining the Nerdery, Mark spent his time coding, designing, and occasionally zookeeping. He is a fellow graduate of Macalester College, go Scots, and pursued additional studies at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design and the University of Queensland in Brisbane, Australia. Please join me in welcoming Mark Hurlbert.
Well, thanks so much for having me here today to talk to you guys. It's an honor to be here. I feel like I can skip this whole first part since I've been introduced so well. So I'm Mark. I am currently actually, I have most recently been the Chief Strategy Officer at the Nerdery, but my current gig these days is as president and co-founder of Prime Digital Academy. And Prime is an 18-week accelerated program, and it's really designed around helping people get up to speed for entry-level work in software engineering. And I'm really proud of my time at the Nerdery, but I'm excited to kind of be here today to talk to you guys more specifically about Prime and what we're doing there. So Prime is really about an industry-driven response to the tech talent crunch. We're a private career school, and we have a really deep connection to the industry that we serve. And talking about that, I mean, I think some people tend to think of the tech industry, and that's true, but the shortage of tech workers is something that affects the entire economy locally here, not just tech companies. Just kind of as an example, at all of you guys' respective places of business and work, how many of you, by show of hands, have rolled out a change to your sales, your marketing, your human resource, your operations, or your finance processes and systems in the last 5 years? Okay, so pretty much everybody. How about the last 3 years? Okay, 1 year. Okay, who's doing it right now? Okay, you probably should get back to work. Generally speaking, these kinds of changes are done with the help of subject matter experts like yourself, but they're also done with the help of some really talented people that are helping to engineer and design those processes. And more as businesses become more dependent on that technology, they become more dependent on those people and having those smart people, those nerds that are there ready to help push those companies forward. The Nerdery is a company that's keenly aware of that. The Nerdery is really all about supporting passionate technologists. The vision of the Nerdery to be the best place in the world for nerds to work has helped them build a team of over 530 people who've worked on over 9,000 projects since the company's founding in 2003. This culture is really highly focused on self-driven development and on-the-job learning, and those are both things that really help to inspire Prime as we built our business. As the chief strategist at a company like the Nerdery, a lot of my time was spent focused on talent. The Nerdery is a company who turns smart people's time into money. That's what the company does. And so in looking at that, I was really kind of in a situation where I was looking at the confluence of a couple different things in the industry. The first being that there aren't enough qualified developers in the market. The second being there are some kind of fundamental misalignments between sources of new talent and some market realities. And then finally, industry really has, at this point, failed to invest in entry-level talent in software engineering in a way that is necessary to be able to drive the, drive the investment that will be required to be able to support us going forward. So this is kind of where we're at, and it's not great. It's not awesome. We are in a position where, from my opinion, the industry is headed towards a very untenable situation. And when I say industry here, really, I mean the economy in many ways. And so I'm going to dig into these each a little bit more, and then I'll kind of circle back around to what Prime's doing about it. So the first thing being, there aren't enough developers. So this is the problem that you guys, I'm sure, have heard about. It's in the news pretty frequently. They talk about the tech talent gap, the tech talent crisis, and it's something that if you guys know any recruiters that work in technology, they'll be happy to talk at you about, probably at length. But here's some data to back it up. So this is a statistic from CompTIA, which is an industry kind of analyst group. And this was done in 2013, and they were suggesting that there was going to be a 28% increase in software application development jobs by 2020. That is something like 4 or 5 times the average job growth rate in the US, and it is pretty staggering. It's a tremendous amount of growth. It's a tremendous amount of new people in an industry that also, like a lot of other industries, is losing people somewhat demographically based on people retiring and based on the kind of age demographics. And so it's really already proving to be a problem. There are 65, this is from another survey, this one was done in 2014. It was a survey of leaders in IT in industry. So not specifically IT companies, but IT leaders. 65% of the leaders surveyed said that the shortage of talent is negatively affecting their business, and 40% said that it was the #1 problem that they had. And so there are a lot of things that are driving this phenomenon, the lack of tech talent and what's going on. And I think probably the most important thing, the most relevant thing that's driving that is the fact that 10 years ago, companies like the Nerdery competed with Facebook, they competed with Google, they competed with Yahoo, and that's just not the case anymore. I mean, it's true, all of those companies are vying for the attention of engineers, but chances are, if you look in the metro, just in the Twin Cities, for instance, almost any company of any significant size has some level of development staff on staff. Really, we are entering into a period in history where all companies are technology companies to some extent. And so we're ending up in a situation where a much larger pool of people are competing for the same number of developers and the same talent, and that's really starting to show some strain. So, if we need all of these developers, they're all kind of in such hot demand, the answer is probably just to graduate more, right? We just need more coming out of the school system. And unfortunately, there are some challenges with that too, and there are some misalignments between education and industry in terms of what's needed to make developers work. And I think a lot of this comes down to some real fundamentals, which is that engineers learn through doing, right? Engineers, they tinker, they take things apart, they put them back together, and increasingly there are traditional academic programs that are taking that into account and are starting to build those sorts of experiences into their curriculum. It's entirely possible at this point, unfortunately, to graduate with a 2 or 4 year degree in computer science where you don't actually build anything during that entire time. You come out of an educational program, you head into the workforce, you show up for the first day at your job, and you just don't really know what it is that you're supposed to be doing. Couple that with some kind of changes that are happening on the macro level in education. So for instance, I don't know if you guys know this, the current statistic is that it takes, the average bachelor's degree in the United States takes 6 years to complete right now. So the average person takes 6 years to complete their bachelor's degree. And that's kind of a problem when you look at technology. So, this is just one of the few of the devices that developers these days have to think about when they're developing software. So you guys will notice on there, any of you have any kids for sure will notice the iPads, things like that, the mobile phones, kind of the toddler crack to keep them busy when you're at the restaurant or whatever. So here's the deal. The graduating class of 2015 of computer scientists, when they started their studies, most of those devices didn't exist. iPads weren't a thing yet. Mobile traffic accounted for about 1/3% of internet traffic. They're graduating from their program into a world where there are 1.3 million apps in Apple's App Store. They're graduating to a world where 1/3 of all traffic is being delivered to mobile devices like these. The world is just very different than the world that they went to school in, and it's very different from the world even further removed from the world where the curriculum that they went to school on was developed. And so we really need to start to re-examine what is being a developer all about, and how do you train people to do that work. One of the things that it comes down to is that this is the vision that a lot of people have when they think of developers. They think of, they saw a movie with Keanu Reeves or Hugh Jackman in it or something, and they were kind of, in the dark typing, and there was like empty Red Bull cans around them and things like that. And that's not what development is. I mean, the Red Bull can part is pretty spot on actually, but the rest of it, not so much. Software engineering has really become an extraordinarily collaborative experience. It's very much about people working together. This notion of kind of a lone wolf programmer is just not a thing that people are really successful at anymore. You have to work with project managers, quality assurance people, UXers, developers. It really takes a huge amount of people to be able to do anything significant in software. So the more that some educational programs are focused on the how do you do this, and like you memorize this algorithm, figure out how to do this in an optimal way, they're sometimes missing out on the core part, which is that you really need to get people to come with you to where you want to go, and you need to be able to focus on both soft skills and technical skills in order to be effective as a software engineer. And that's really what this quote from Connor Ness, who's one of the principal software engineers at the Nerdery, is all about. He says, a good software engineer understands that development is about solving problems for people. Yeah.
You mentioned collaborative. Do you mean physically collaborative or electronically collaborative?
Both. It kind of depends on the company that you're working with. The collaboration at the root is about cooperating with people, and that's the thing that's most important. Whether you're doing that over a Google Hangout or you're doing it over a cup of coffee, it's kind of irrelevant. The most important part, though, is that you do understand that you're solving a problem with people for people. I'd argue that the most important skill that an engineer needs is empathy. If you don't understand why somebody has a problem and what pain that problem is causing, you're never going to be able to solve it. One of the things that we talk about in the school, one of our core values, is empathy beats engineering. And that's really all about the notion that a well-engineered solution to a poorly understood problem is no solution at all. And so, it doesn't matter how smart your answer is. If it's to the wrong question, then you're up a creek. And so, really, that's the core problem, is like, how can we re-engineer the way that we train engineers to be aligned with what the industry needs. And so we have one more problem after that, though. Let's say we Prime and other people are successful in rebooting the education industry, and we get it perfectly aligned with what the industry wants. The challenge is this. And this is kind of a dumb joke that is sadly not very funny if you're an entry-level person in software engineering, which is that I did some research on this. It was for the last talk that I did was actually the week after Valentine's Day, so I did some time over the weekend doing some research, and I can tell you that generally speaking, it's not a good way to earn brownie points with your spouse, is to spend Valentine's Day with a spreadsheet. Doesn't work out well. But I looked at about 100 job listings that were open at the time for software engineers, and just craziness, like 95% of them had time-boxed experience requirements. So 95% of them said must have 2 to 5 years of experience in this, must have 3 or 4 years of experience in that. And ultimately, that's really evidence of the industry's failure to embrace entry-level talent. And it ends up coming from a few different sources. The industry has a few challenges. The first is that they have a hard time evaluating entry-level talent. A lot of the industry is built around you must have 3 to 5 years of experience, and that's because rather than figuring out how good somebody is at something, it's sometimes easier to say, well, how long have you been doing it? Because surely you would have quit or gotten fired at some point if you were really bad at it. So being able to get in at that entry level and say you have 0 years of experience, but you're a good person, that's not something that the industry is super comfortable with or good at. Another is that there's inconsistency of talent. So in addition to these newer programs like Prime that are coming out that are trying to train people in a different way, there are a ton of different academic options that are out there, from self-training to 2-year degrees to 4-year degrees to master's programs, all with completely different philosophies, completely different approaches, meaning that the talent that's coming into the market could be anywhere. It can be all over the place. So it isn't easy for companies to say, well, as long as they have this level of experience or this level of education, then they're going to be usable for us, because it could be anywhere. It's a total crapshoot. The lack of non-technical job skills. So again, I touched on this earlier. Somebody can come out of a program with a really good understanding of algorithms and an understanding of the technology, but if they're not good communicators, if they're not somebody that you want to put in a room with a stakeholder, they're not going to be able to do the job, and that's something that is really important. Lack of business understanding. So you guys might have experienced this before, and some nerds that you've worked with, and that sometimes people who are really motivated and passionate about technology don't know how businesses work. And increasingly we're putting people in positions to solve business challenges in situations where they don't always have all the context. So trying to make sure that people coming into the industry have base levels of understanding about how accounting principles work, how kind of just basic kind of life experience in industry works. And then finally, and this is by far, I would say, the most significant thing, is the risk of attrition. We talk to employers all the time as part of developing Prime, and one of the things that we heard over and over and over and over again was, if I have 2 people standing in front of me, one has 0 years of experience and the other one has 1 year of experience, even if I have to pay a premium for the person with 1 year of experience, I'm gonna go with that. And the reasoning is, if I hire the person with 0 years of experience and I invest a year in getting them up to speed, unfortunately, the experience that employers have had in this market is that then they go take a job with somebody else where they're getting paid for their 1 year of experience. And so there isn't that longevity of relationship. There's a real risk aversion that happens in employers when they're trying to figure that out. And so this is kind of the way that we're warping the ecosystem. So in a healthy ecosystem for talent, you have a bunch of people at the entry level, you have some people at the mid level, and then you have a few people at the top. And when that happens, things can get shaken up in the industry, and it's stable. The industry doesn't fall apart. What's happening now is that we have less investment at the entry level, and the ecosystem is less resilient. We're fortunate that we've had a few really good years in the tech industry, but we're not well positioned for being able to weather challenges going forward if we don't start to reinvest in the entry-level talent and build more of an ecosystem. So back to here, this is where we are. This is the environment that Prime is really designed to solve. This is what we're aimed at, is existing in the reality where these 3 things are going on and trying to really attack the problem from a core kind of pragmatic standpoint. Here's what we're doing. Really, our mission is to empower smart people with the skills to code tomorrow. And that's both about helping them learn fast, but it's also about how much of the future is dependent on software, and what a great chance an individual has to be able to make an impact on that future if they have coding skills. We do 3 things for our students. The first is we try and provide them with relevant, job-relevant day 1 technical skills. So these are the things they need to know first day, first week, first month on the job, the stuff that's helping them to justify their position within an employer. The second is job-relevant behavioral skills, and this is really 2 things. One is the basic kind of communications type stuff you would think of, good written communication, constructive conflict resolution, kind of the things that you expect from a mature worker. But on the other side, it's also what we call kind of software life skills. So it's things like reading and writing project scopes, it's source code management, it's things that are technology related but aren't programming and that often don't get taught in schools. And then the last, and I would argue the most important thing that we do for students, is really trying to instill in them the skill set, the tool set, and the mindset for continuous learning. Our goal with students is to turn out graduates who understand that software engineering is a treadmill. And when you step on, everything that you know is worth a little bit less every single day. And the way that you fight that, the way that you succeed as a software engineer, is you keep learning. You really have a commitment to learning new tool sets, new techniques, new technologies, and applying them to new challenges as you go forward. So our students learn modern technologies, they learn real-world methodologies and relevant behavioral stuff, and that's all through experiential learning. We have an 18-week program, and the speed and intensity of the program is, interestingly, what makes it accessible to a lot of non-traditional students. People who would say that a 2-year program might not work for them, it might interrupt their life for too long of a period, it might be something that doesn't fit into an existing lifestyle that they've established with a family, can find that an 18-week program, especially one where really only 12 weeks is highly intense, is something that can fit. We've also really tried to make sure that our program is affordable. So the tuition is set for $12,500, and while it's not cheap, it is something that we believe provides a really compelling value. I don't know if you guys know this, but the statistic about the cost of college is kind of shocking. In the last 29 years, college education costs have risen 538%. So it's about double what healthcare costs have risen over that same period, and we know how everybody feels about healthcare costs. So education has become incredibly expensive, and we're really focused on providing actionable outcomes for our students during their time with us. And so far, that's really paying off. Since we opened our applications in December of this last year, we've had over 730 people begin applications applying to the program. And that's to fill, at this point, we've opened 100 slots, and we just opened 40 of those this last month. So we've had an incredibly huge response, great people. The admissions process itself is kind of a gauntlet. It takes about 10 to 15 hours for somebody to do the application, and then there's also an interview that they come in for. We have them do essay writing. We have them do battery of logic questions. They actually have to do a technical challenge as part of the application where we provide them some resources, and they have to build their resume as a web page and post it on the internet. And that's been really great in helping to limit the people that we talk to people who are really committed to trying to make a change in their lives. Our first cohort is right now in their 4th week of pre-study, and we could not be more proud of the group. They're really, really awesome. Our first cohort includes, I don't have numbers on this, but I'll give you some sampling of the background of people. Baristas, we have a lawyer, a couple retail clerks, there's a jet pilot, a chef, a writer, and there's actually a professional opera singer as well in the first cohort. So people are coming from all kinds of backgrounds. Our average age for the program is 25 to 35. About 70% of the people in the program are between 20 and 40 years of age. About 65% of our students already have an existing degree. 45% have a bachelor's degree. Actually, 13% of our students have a master's or a PhD coming to us. So this is what our approach looks like. We have a cohort-based system, so we bring in 20 students at a time, and those 20 students go through the entire program together. We're in our first cohort right now, our beta cohort. Starting in July, we'll be switching to our production schedule, which has monthly cohort starts. So I'll bring in 20 new students every month. They're in the program they're in the classroom for 3 months, and then they're graduating at the end of that. At the end of the program, our goal is for students to either be eligible for entry-level work in software engineering as front-end developers or JavaScript developers, or they'll be taking out apprenticeships within our hiring network to learn other technologies using kind of the foundations that they've learned and earned during the program. This is kind of what the program looks like itself. So we have a 6-week period, which our first cohort is in right now, and that's mostly online study. So students spend about 15 to 20 hours a week doing online study. We do 2 different live chats with them for an hour. There are video chats once a week, and then they're also starting up this week with a study group where they're meeting in person to go through some stuff. That's really about everybody getting up to a consistent level. So when we bring people into the classroom, they have a common language, they have common understanding, and they can kind of be effective in learning in a very condensed period of time. In Boot and Build, which is kind of the 12 weeks of in-person classroom, students are spending Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. in the classroom. They have evening assignments every night, and they have weekend projects that they're working on as a group. So, we estimate that students are spending a minimum of 60 hours a week on their studies for 12 weeks during the program. So it's very intense, very much focused on kind of drinking from the fire hose, getting people a lot of exposure, giving a lot of experience. The first part of the classroom, boot, it's boot camp, and it's kind of, you would think of it as a more traditional classroom. There's about 4 hours of lecture a day. The balance of the time is exercises, pair programming, live coding with instructors, and so on. In the build portion, that's where we start to have a stronger departure from traditional education, and that it's very much focused on project work. So we're working with the people at the Center for Entrepreneurship at Carlson School, the people who run the Minnesota Cup, if you guys are familiar with that. It's a startup competition for Minnesota startups. They're bringing startups into the classroom where we'll be doing kind of student haircut work for those startups as part of the program. So students are coming out with actual experience, working on stuff, getting a chance to actually build something that might see the light of day rather than kind of doing pretend projects and things like that. This is a kind of a somewhat truncated list at this point. We have a network that we've built of just under 50 organizations that are supporting Prime. And those organizations do everything from give us feedback on our curriculum, help us to determine what technologies are going to be relevant for the market. They come in and they do mock interviews and kind of resume review with our students. They also, unsurprisingly, I think, are wanting to hire people because all of these are companies that desperately need tech talent. So we're really proud to be very much driven by and supportive of the industry in which we live. We have a commitment to iterating on our curriculum every month going forward as we're building a pipeline into the community. So for instance, our students that are in pre-work right now will graduate July 3rd. We hope to have those students placed in July. We'll be following up with those students and their employers in August to say, what didn't they know? What did they need in order to hit the ground running? What could have been better? What were they not ready for? And that will be stuff that will inform our September curriculum. So we really have a very kind of lean startup, iterative, rapid evolution approach to education that we're really excited to get in there and get working. So I kind of went off script here, but I think I covered pretty much everything that I was going to talk about. I'd be more than happy to take any questions that you guys have, though.
What are your plans for Prime to grow, as far as if you have 730 people that apply, you can take 100, or you're doing 20 a slot? Are you looking at some point, maybe after you've tweaked everything, and then saying, we are planning to grow our number of students by X?
It's a good question. We do see some opportunity for expansion within the market. We are currently, so our current facility that we've built out allows us to do 3 concurrent cohorts, which will have us graduating around 240 students a year, which is a significant amount of students, a significant amount of talent being put into a skilled job like software engineering. We actually feel pretty good about where we're at right now. I think if we can maintain the level of applications that we're getting, one of the big differences between this model of education and a more traditional model of education, I should be clear, we're not an accredited school. We're not seeking accreditation. We kind of are happy to be outside of the accreditation system. Part of the benefit for us is that we get to be really selective. The thing that employers are coming to us for is people who have vetted technical skills, but also people who are really high quality people who are going to fit well within a workforce. Having that very large pool of people that we're winnowing down, as long as we can maintain the demand, allows us to make sure that we certainly, our written goals are 90% placement within the industry, but my expectation is that it's going to be pretty damn close to 100%. So, and if we can keep the selectivity where it's at, I think that we're going to be that much more effective at that.
2 quick questions. If you were speaking to a college student who's entering college or in their first year or so, what would you if they were looking for a job out of college, what would you tell them or tell them to look for in their classes and their majors? And secondly, we hear a lot about our returning veterans who have high level of skills, that they're doing high level of technical work in the military, but they're not able to translate into civilian language and into a civilian resume to make that match. Have you run into this, and do you have tools that you're offering to that?
Yeah, so let me start with the second question first. So looking at demographics, one of the things that we think is really important, and part of what Prime is designed to try and help, is the lack of diversity within technology. Within technology as an industry is incredibly monochromatic. It's incredibly gender slanted. So it's, you know, Blacks and Latinos are not well represented within technology. Veterans are not well represented within technology, and especially women are not well represented within technology. Application development is about 7% female, so it's about 93% male. And part of what we see is that rapid training programs like Prime are really poised to help address that challenge. We have 2 scholarship programs, 3 scholarship programs really. One of them is done in partnership with the city, and that is related to, it's kind of adjacent to the Tech Hire program that you guys maybe heard President Obama talking about a couple weeks ago. I was actually very fortunate to be invited out. I got to go to the White House and be there for the announcement of that program, and have some really great conversations with Vice President Biden and Secretary of Labor Perez and Megan Smith, CTO of the U.S. about this challenge, talking about how can we improve diversity. We have some relatively minor scholarships for veterans right now. Unfortunately, we're working on trying to get better on that. We have, I think, 3 veterans within the first 4 cohorts. One of which is a woman named Chelsea, who is in our first cohort, who is a cryptic linguist. She's a code writer in Afghanistan, and she's back in the States now and is looking to get into development. She really fell in love with that there. But yeah, like the biggest success story for us, diversity-wise, is that the first 4 cohorts for us are 50% women. So it's about, 8 times the industry average, which is awesome, and really is kind of heartening for us about how we can affect the face of the industry and go from there. Can you remind me what your first question was? I don't think I hit it.
This is what college students, what you would advise them to seek in terms of majors and or training.
Yeah. I mean, I think college education is really, really important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting don't go to college. I think that programs like ours are very complementary to traditional educational programs. The vast majority of our students have existing degrees. For somebody who's looking to get into the industry, and I think that's where the misalignment sometimes happens, I would say, really look for experiential learning. Look for something where you're building something in your program. Look for something where you're building something with people, so you're not just learning to do stuff on your own. And that's not unique to Prime, but it's something that we're really focused on. Any program that has those components and that's really focused on it is going to be effective.
Do you have time to stick around?
Yeah. One more.
All right, if anyone's late,
You just take 2 seconds to answer. You cover your costs.
What's that?
You cover your educational costs.
Yeah. We're doing this as a profitable business. We believe that the best way to be sustainable is to be profitable, and thus far it's looking really good. We're very proud. We think that we're going to turn a profit in 2015. So.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
that.
much.